Hello, Emmanuel and Javier. The story that I will give you guys an overview and an analysis on is San Manuel Bueno Martir, and that's written by Miguel de Unamuno. So basically, this is a great story that I remember reading vividly last year, and we spent a lot of time with the whole class just dissecting all the symbols and then what was going on, and it's not an easy story to read as well. And that, I guess, the setting or the moral behind it, um, the themes will probably be mentioned in the AP test because they do mention the difference between fantasy and reality, religion and logic, science and religion. So there will be that theme expressed in the AP test one way or another through multiple choice or uh, extended response or an essay. So let's begin. I just want to give you an overview of Miguel de Unamuno. So I'm sure you guys read up a bit. He had a tough life, kind of like Horacio Quiroga, but he was a very Catholic man. He wrote very Catholic stuff, and one of this, ironically, although it judges the Catholic Church at the time, it criticizes it. He does put in good light eventually onto it in his other works besides this one. So really, the setting begins at the town in Spain, Valverde de Lucerna, which is a fictional town. And according to legend, this is a new town that was built basically above a town that is sunk into the lake. So the lake is another symbol that you guys should keep in mind because it'll be important later in the story. So the narration begins with Angela, Angela, who is the helper of Don Manuel. She's a very important figure because she represents basically the whole people, the people that adore Don Manuel. There goes to my second point. The main character is Don Manuel, who's the local Catholic priest there. So he's very important because he's just a great guy. He's very charitable in his acts towards the townspeople. He's always helping. He tries not to condemn anyone. There is a story that they mention there that there was a woman who was impregnated out of wedlock, and the local, at the time, the Catholic Church's rule was that lady had to be excommunicated for committing adultery. But he then took her ex-boyfriend and he married them, so at least the child could grow up with a father figure. So he's doing great stuff, very helpful for the townspeople, and good judgment. Now Angela, the thing is, there's always that there's the transition. You guys have to remember that the local village is symbolic for this close, tight-knit community of believers, people that believe, in the church, and specifically as their second Christ, Don Manuel. And she comes from the city. You'll see this, that the city represents, the outside world that goes against religion, which brings me to my third character, Lazarus, who's Angela's brother, Lazaro. So he also comes from the city to visit his hometown. But he comes from the city with new ideas, about communism, Marxism. Again, this is the early 20th century. So this is when Marxist ideals started taking over and started gaining popularity, mainly because of monarchist oppression from all these, what used to be great empires and are slowly breaking down, like Spain. So he comes back, and he's from the New World, El Nuevo Mundo, he calls it. And he's disgusted with the blindness of the village. Like, he's basically saying, like, oh my gosh, what are these people? They believe in this guy, that he actually believes in what he teaches. So he starts thinking, Don Manuel is a great guy, and he's very logical, he's intelligent, good education, seems like, right? Seminary. He can't really believe in what he teaches. I mean, it's all just bizarre and bogus and rubbish. So then he wants to talk to him. So eventually they do talk, Lazaro and Don Manuel. The important thing, when they talk, they go around the lake. So the lake is very important. This is where Don Manuel frequently takes his walks. So they go and they walk around and they talk. Basically, what they were talking about is that Don Manuel confesses to him that I don't really believe in any of the stuff that I teach. I'm only doing this good stuff. I'm being charitable to the townspeople because that's the only way to make them content. My personal opinions," he says to Lazaro, "are like not important. Right now, I don't believe in any of the stuff that I teach because it's not logical." And Lazaro, like this is very surprising. A priest that doesn't believe in what he teaches, like how could this be? Isn't he a hypocrite? And again, Don Manuel is like, I'd rather be lying than giving them like hard truth, because then that'll just separate the whole town and it'll just bring chaos. So eventually, a few years later, Lazaro's and Angela's mother passes away. On her deathbed, she tells Lazaro to please pray for him, even though he's not Catholic. He doesn't believe in God, but he promises to pray for her. There's a scene in there where he goes to Mass. Don Manuel is celebrating Mass, and he takes communion. So the whole town sees this. They know Lazaro is an atheist. They know that he doesn't believe in God, yet they see him take communion. So they're like, "Oh, okay, he converted, great." But really, he doesn't mean it. He's doing it really for his mother, because that was his wish, and he loves his mother. So Lazarus eventually tells Angela what Don Manuel told him. She can't believe this because, again, she represents the people. This is just very surprising, and it really hits her hard because, this is someone she loves. This is a very respected man that, this whole time he was lying. You could believe how surprising it was. So then she goes to Don Manuel and asks him and tells him, like, "Oh, Lazaro was saying this, that you don't believe it. I don't believe it. Is this true? Is this accurate information?" And he's like, "Yeah." To be honest, Don Manuel reaffirms to Angela this time that he doesn't believe in any of this stuff, and he's only doing this so that the people could be content with their life in the village. So fast forward, many years later, Don Manuel is getting weak and he's getting old. He's still doing the same thing, but there's this one verse in the creed, the Nicene Creed that we repeat at Mass. At that time, the Mass was in Latin, so he would be reciting it in Latin. "Credo in resurrectione mortuorum," which is, "I believe in the resurrection of the dead." He can't believe this. He gets so fed up with just this simple verse, because that's, Christianity wouldn't be Christianity if it was not for the resurrection of the dead at the end of the world. So eventually, that's weird because it doesn't give too much information. Unamuno right away skips to Angela talking about his funeral. And what's very important, that he decides to die very righteously and dramatically in front of the whole people so that they could see him as a saint. Not for the sake of his own pride or his own glorification, because he doesn't believe in it anyways. What good would it do for him? But just so that the people could continue believing in Catholicism, in the resurrection of the dead, of someone being a saint. So Angela is also very old. You can imagine she's like an old grandmother that's telling this story to her children. So now it goes back to what she's saying. She goes away from the story, and it goes into her thought process. She says to them, like, "Okay, God made them believe themselves that they were non-believers." She's talking about Lazaro and Don Manuel. Lazaro dies too. The blindfold fell from their eyes at the end of their life. So this gives us a twist. Angela still believes in, the Catholic faith. She still believes in God, even though she knows that Don Manuel does not believe it. This is a very important analysis that we have to do, because there was the separation between the good works and faith. Long time ago, way back in the day, Middle Ages, Renaissance, it was more important to be going to church, to be going, partaking of all the sacraments, being Catholic by title and on the surface. And the internal life of the spiritual life, I guess, wasn't too much important. There was not much of an emphasis on giving to the poor, feeding the hungry, all the more humanitarian efforts. Nowadays, Christianity as a whole, not the church's opinion, but people have sort of switched it. They've taken the pendulum and, maybe based on what your beliefs are, taken it to the other extreme where, they say, okay, church isn't really important, and partaking in the sacraments is important. It matters what you do. It matters what action, which there's some truth to that. And I'm not going to go on to a theological rant about this, but that's basically what Miguel de Unamuno is questioning. Right now, this is early 20th century. This is before humanitarian and more democratic ideals were put in to scale, but it was already creeping up with Marxism and socialism and communism, as you see in history, giving to the people, right? So he questions this, and one thing that we have to remember that with this story is that there is that difference between, we have to analyze the difference between fantasy and reality, religion and logic. So that the AP test will go over that in one way or another, either through this specific story or some of the poems of Teresa de Avila. I don't know if you guys read that one, but that's another one. And then some of Quiroga's, Borges, all of those poems and short stories that you guys will read, and the plays too. Because there is clearly a tension, especially in Latin American and Spanish history. There's a tension between religion, practice, and then internal life. And this is a perfect example of that tension, especially amongst religion, practice, and then personal beliefs. So I hope you guys do well on this, and I hope this has at least helped in one way or another. So good luck. Thank you.